Here is another video that might be helpful, or at least might get you going in the right direction if you're planning on building a stairway that is going to be in the ground, something where you're going to use dirt, sand, or gravel, and in some cases even concrete to create your steps. But maybe this might be a little easier way to figure out how to build those steps instead of just guessing, kind of a thing. I know a lot of people start out just by taking a board and then putting it in here and leveling it and then building another step, and then find out pretty soon they're into the hillside a little too far or sticking out, and it usually doesn't work out that good. So we're going to start with a starting point. You're going to need a starting point at the top, and this can be wherever you choose. And you're going to need a starting point at the bottom. Now I have this stake a little higher because I'm going to use it to put a straight edge, a board here that we're going to use to figure out the length of each step and the height of each step or the risers. So it'll be nice to have this level. This stake here or board, whatever you use, is going to need to be vertically plumb in both directions to be able to figure out the length of the tread. And if you're off a little bit, it's not going to be a big deal because you can kind of adjust. And again, I say it's not going to be a big deal. It'll depend on how many steps you're going to have and the length or width of the steps. For example, if you have a step that is, each one of your steps is going to be 12 inches, then you might need to be a little more accurate. However, if these steps are going to be 24 inches, you're not going to have to be as accurate if you have one that's 24 inches and another one that's 23 and a half inches, something like that. So the straight edge will need to be level. And it would be a good idea to secure the straight edge to the stakes. And then you're simply going to put a mark. You're going to transfer a mark up here from the bottom. And right here, if this thing's level, you're going to be, or plumb I should say, you're going to be fine. And then we have another mark here, and we're simply going to measure the distance from here to here, which is 8 feet in our example, and then the rise is going to be 36 inches or 3 feet. And make sure that you measure the right distance. I know a lot of times I've seen people, even made this mistake myself, where I actually measure from the ground to the top of the board when I'm going to need to be measuring from the bottom of the board. So now that we have 3 feet, we need to figure out how many steps and risers we're going to have. And you would need to check with your local building codes, but most of the time, 7 3/4 inches is going to be the maximum. And to find that, we just simply divide a few numbers in to 36 inches until we find our risers. And in this case, we're going to divide 5 into 36 inches, and that's going to give us a 7.2 rise, or almost a 7 1/4 inch rise. And now that we know we're going to have 5 risers, that's going to give us 4 steps. We're going to divide 8 into 4, or 4 into 8 feet, which is going to provide us with 4 steps that are 2 feet wide each. And this is where you can change things up a little bit. You can put a 2x12 down like this. You can use a 2x8, whatever you feel comfortable with, and firmly secure it to the ground with some stakes. And you can actually attach it to the side where you're using the stakes for your straight edge. You don't need to do it exactly the same way that I'm doing this. But after you're done watching the video, you can figure out what you want to do, or even while you're building the stairs. So, I mean, keep in mind that this video is giving you some ideas. You can change certain parts of it if it's going to work better for you. So here we have a guide that we're going to use to figure out where our steps are going to go. And we're simply going to just come down off of these lines that we've equally divided into 2 feet. And that would end up looking something like this. You're just coming down here with your level, getting a line, and then transferring it to the layout board. The next step will be to remove the straight edge and the stakes. Now we have the lines that we need. We're going to start by putting our first board in for our riser. And in order to do that, it's going to be nice if it's square off of the guide board here. And it's going to need to be level. And it wouldn't be a bad idea to drive a couple of stakes in the ground in the back, because this is going to be covered with the soil or the gravel, whatever you're going to use for your steps or even the concrete. But make sure it's down at least an inch above the surface. And you could use 2x4 stakes if you want. They could be wider, larger, and of course you could put 5 or 6 stakes in here if you want. I will leave that up to you. And of course, I just wanted to throw this in here. Level across here and see where you're going to be. In some situations, you're going to have to remove a little more dirt than you might have been thinking after you kind of laid your little guide board here. And in some cases, you might want to lower this, but in order to lower it and keep all of your measurements in the same spot, you're going to need to make a couple of marks here. And we're going to lower this 3 inches. So in order to do that, we're simply going to make a mark on the stake, a mark on the stringer, come down 3 inches here, and then do the same thing at the top. And then we are going to use these marks to lower our guide board. And again, I'm not suggesting you have to do this, just kind of suggesting if this is going to be more helpful, then go for it. Now, another thing we're going to do here to make our job a little easier will be to cut a board the length of our risers. So in our case, this is going to be 7.2 inches, just a little bit under 7¼ inches. And then we're going to put the level on top and level over so that we can make a mark. And then our next riser or corner of the step will be located right exactly where we want it to be, as shown here. And then we're simply going to repeat this process until we get to the last riser. And here's kind of what I'm talking about, this guide board. It's a guide board. You're probably not going to want to leave it in here because it's not going to do you much good. So you could remove it and install a different board, or change the direction by simply lowering the top into the ground a little further. Now let's go ahead and cut our treads or our steps in. And again, this is a landscaping type stairway. You can use gravel, pavers, concrete, whatever you want here. The main point is to be able to provide you with another method for building these types of stairs. So you can fill it with gravel up to here. You can see we're about 1/4 inch shorter here. The lumber we're using here will be 4x8s that are 7½ inches, and then we're just going to bury them into the ground a little bit, 7¼ inches. I don't recommend using something smaller than the overall height of the riser. So if you have a 6-inch riser, you might still need to use a 6x8, or get a 4x6 and then nail a 2x4 on the bottom of it. Just don't use a 4x6 and leave a gap at the bottom of it, because that could create a problem for soil erosion in the future. Next up on the list, we will need to reposition or remove and reshape the bottom and top of our guide board, and or you get a different board altogether. You can always put a 4x on the side here, maybe a 4x10, 4x8, something will work on the side. You don't need to use a 2x, and of course you can always use pressure treated lumber here also. If you are going to use pressure treated lumber, make sure that it's ground rated pressure treated lumber, and I'll put a link here to a video I already made explaining the different types of pressure treated lumber that you can use. And of course the top can be shaped like this. You don't want to have a trip hazard. You don't want this thing sticking up past the soil to where somebody can kind of come around here and trip on anything. And of course we can use the same board that we cut here most of the time for the other side. And again, you're not going to need to mark this one up or lay anything out, because all of these should be positioned correctly. And of course you can use nails or screws to attach these side boards to the risers. And that about wraps up this video. Gravel, concrete, pavers, something in here. Again, we're just kind of trying to figure out a way to make this project or process for building these types of stairs on a smaller hill a little easier for you. So again, there are other ways to do this. You don't need to get caught up in this particular method. You can always watch the video a couple times. Maybe it'll give you some ideas for a different process to use. But the main thing is to get you started going in the right direction. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comment area, video comment area on YouTube, or email them to me and I will answer them as soon as possible.